everyone can presume. There we go. There's one. Hello and welcome to another edition of Indiepocalypse Radio. I was caught off guard because my OBS has had to dump out my default microphone, and it was like, "What's going on here?" I was like, "Man, buddy, I don't know." Anyway, we are here with another edition of Indiepocalypse Radio, your show that is part way between an interview and a convention hangout. My name is Andrew. I'm the host of the show and the otherwise organizer of the monthly game anthology Indiepocalypse. We are here with a trio of guests. Our first guest, you may know from the wide world of video games. I'm trying to think of the titular. I should say the titular Frog Factions, but it's not a titular thing. That's just the name of the game itself. But Jim Stormdancer. Jim, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I should have named a character in that game Frog Fractions. That would have made things
Yes,
much clearer.
I'm. That is me. Oh, 20. Was it only 2020, or is that just when it was published on itch?
Oh yeah, that was the remaster.
Yes, that's what I
The
thought.
original game, the Flash game, was 2012.
That's what I thought, because I've been in an extremely early 2010s to early 2000s mindset lately.
Mm-hmm.
Because it feels like I was I do a tape club of physical releases, and my last two were I Get This Call Every Day and Captain Forever, which are in my mind the same headspace of those early 2010s indie breakouts.
Right.
But also,
Yeah. The ones that I associate with Frog Fractions, because I remember them being like, I don't know if this is a thing that is established in human psychology, but
yeah.
I've definitely noticed when my emotions are heightened for whatever reason, I remember things better. So I remember specifically that Hotline Miami and Gang Beasts were also doing numbers around the time Frog Fractions blew up.
Right. Very. I mean, I'm trying to think of. I don't know the Gang Beast lineage, but Hotline Miami is also a, that's Cactus's 57th game or whatever.
Oh yeah. He had made so much stuff. But I think it might have been his first commercial game.
Right. Or at least I don't know. That's the weirdness about indie and commercial, in that era of what is it, a commercial because you put a dollar value on it, or or you have a publisher.
Yeah. I mean, Frog Fractions, I didn't get paid to make that, and I didn't charge money for it, but it's definitely the most valuable thing I've ever done in the world.
Yes.
And the thing I've gotten, this piece of software I've gotten the most value out of, albeit indirectly.
Right. How does one even monetize a Flash game?
Yeah. Well, you could at the time, or at least I think at the tail end
Yeah.
of that, you could get paid by websites
Right.
who would host your Flash game, and you would have to add a lock to your game to make sure the game could only run on their website. And the idea was that they would pay you a pittance, probably $1,000 or less.
Yeah. Right.
And the game would go up there on their site, and then they'd get ad revenue from when people went to their site to play the game.
Yeah.
That's the bad version of the Frog Fraction story, is that I realized this game had value, and I sold it to somebody for $1,000.
Yes. Right. Oh, that is. You're like, oh, I have this weird alternative indie Flash game. You can't just I'm going to put on. Is it still Greenlight back then? I feel like there was still Greenlight back then.
Yeah, I think Greenlight was still a thing.
Right. So it's I'm gonna make this Flash version of this game push it through Steam, and I don't know, people are gonna vote on it or something. I don't remember how Greenlight worked. I think people voted on it maybe at some point.
That sounds right. I think so. Yeah, I think that, and they kept having shifting rules for what the votes meant.
Right. Right.
Like I think for a while you had to be like in the top something percent of voted games in order to actually go live on Steam.
Until eventually Valve realized, oh, isn't it just much better if just anyone can just pay us to put their games on there? Uh,
Yeah.
then we get paid, and then also we get paid on the back end if they sell anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But instead, they just have this kind of like fun little like money fountain of just a million people publishing games on Steam for $100 that sell nothing. Uh, which is
That's
like,
a ridiculous hustle they have. Yeah.
I wonder what is those numbers for that kind of thing. Um, I think a lot about the idea of, I don't know how true it is, but the idea of, some absurd like 95% of people streaming on Twitch stream to nobody, like zero people.
That seems right. Well, I think that like the $100, they don't need that $100.
Right.
They're really just they're trying to. I mean that was established to limit to throttle the amount of games that were coming in to just the ones people were serious about.
Yeah.
So like they could just have easily have said like, okay, send Gabe a picture of you punching yourself in the face
Right.
to show that you mean it.
And now it's turned into like just another revenue stream, as they say, because there's simply too many games. Um, so so there's no way for them to sensibly, um, like say, oh well, we're a curated Steam storefront or whatever. The notion of curated storefront has been like passed off or abandoned a long time ago because it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways.
Yep.
Like
Unfortunately, it hasn't been replaced by anything,
no,
which is the problem.
right. I mean, its strongest replacement has been advertising dollars,
Jesus. Okay.
which
Yeah.
is, I mean, when you think about like what moves things up, it's like people playing it, like influencers and things like that, and all that. All functionally, all that is really just advertising dollars.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh, I remember giving interviews for a project, and like some of the interviewers like clearly having no idea what the project was. And it's like, oh, if you just pay PR people, it's like implicitly payola. Like it's just kind of like wink, wink, nudge, not quite, but you're basically going, oh yeah, yeah. So you'll get an article here, 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 and here, um,
Right.
because you just get articles, I guess, and people need to create content, and you'll be shuffled off the front page in 13 minutes because they published 15 other articles about a dog that looks like a Pepsi can or something.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, because that's your audience is the people who are into dogs that look like a Pepsi can.
I mean, it does, and I saw that dog on TikTok the other day, and it looked, and it was walking around and made a weird hissing sound. It was everything I needed.
Oh, like when you open the can.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, in a week we'll hear about the Pepsi dog's beliefs, and we'll get a little like, uh oh. Like,
Yeah.
do you hear who owns Pepsi Can Dog?
Uh, I regret to inform you the Pepsi can dog is racist.
Yes, precisely. What a world. Then it'll go away, but not before Pepsi Can Dog gets a cryptocurrency and all that.
Yeah.
What a what a world. Oh, now we alluding to it, and I think I am also just showing my age, going, of course people know what this is, but if people are like to give you a difficult task, if people are unfamiliar with frog fractions, or I guess your work in general, I hate having.
Sure, sure. Is this the part where I talk about what I'm working on?
Yeah, what are you working on? You know what? Tell me about Gordy and the Monster Moon. I don't want to hear anything about frog fractions. Throw that shit in the garbage. I don't want to.
Oh yeah, I've been
Yeah.
making nothing but like so I've got a day job now.
Yes.
Frog Fractions turns out like it paid the bills while I was single, but now that I have a kid, like
Yes.
I need a big boy job. So I've got a real job.
Oh,
It
those are
pays a
great though.
decent amount of
Honestly.
money. Yeah. So I'm making like Pico 8 games in my spare time.
Yeah.
Um, and I shipped one of them commercially called Gordy and the Monster Moon. It's like a Halloween themed Zelda like with none of the usual Zelda interactions. So if you were interested in a game that like kind of feels like a Zelda, but kind of feels very different from a Zelda, go check that one out. I've made a you go to my itch page, you'll find like a bunch more Pico 8 stuff I've
Yeah.
done. Um, like most recently, I made a game called Look Who's the Shining 2, which is a sequel to The Shining, uh, which is kind of if you take a Sokoban, the puzzle script style game, and you replace like very tightly designed puzzles with like more like just here's some situations like an immersive sim
Yes.
that you approach with whatever tools you have on hand. I, it turned out surprisingly well. It was a jam game. I wasn't sure, but if it was going to be good, it turned out surprisingly good. I'm really proud of that game.
Yeah, the surprising amount of Stephen King game jams, you know. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well, the one of the people. Okay, okay. Now I'm talking about. I do a podcast called Topic Lords, where I
yes,
talk to my friends about topics.
yes, that's what
Uh,
put you back into my brain very
oh,
recently,
good.
because
Perhaps you should guest on that show.
I would love to. I am a so there's a secret, folks. I do name search on occasion to see if people are talking about Indiepocalypse, but you have the I give you the assurance that I will never reply to you about it. um, but friend
But one
of
of the
yeah, go ahead.
you go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. So it came up as friend of the show, and a friend of the me linker was on that show,
Oh yeah,
and it was in the
Linker's
show
great.
notes. I'm like, oh, that thing.
Yeah, yeah. But one of the Topic Lords community members runs a annual. It's happened twice, so I guess it's annual now.
Yeah.
Game jam called Pico Steve Mo, which is where you make a Pico 8 game inspired by the works of Stephen King, and it is such a joy for me personally. Like I really, really like. November is now my favorite time of year. It used to be Halloween, now it's Pico Steve Mo.
Yeah,
Just
it's because
watching everybody's games come together is just so delightful.
yeah, he has a lot of stuff, and a lot of it gets kind of uh, unhinged, you know,
Hmm.
to put it politely. So it's like there's a lot of like, but it's also like very like I have not read or watched a lot of it. I spent a little time with all just King. I was gonna say all King things, just King things. I'm like, man,
Oh yeah.
this guy is like the kind of guy whose work I don't want to read, but definitely want to hear about. Um, that, which is like a very specific genre of like art. I don't if that makes sense to people. Like
I feel like that's a lot of the this is gonna be a hot take.
yeah,
I feel like a lot of the things people talk about as like the things that are in the games that I make and things that are like the things that are in the games that I make. Like for example, in the Metal Gear Solid game where there's a boss that you can't fight using controller one, you have to pick up controller two
yes,
because he's psychic. Like that is such a good idea to talk about and such a terrible game to play.
yeah. It's
But it is so cool to talk to hear about it.
right.
And I feel like a lot of the time the strength of the Frog Fraction series was like uh just filling the games with these audacious ideas that people would want to talk about
Yes.
that and then somehow trying to make them also be a playable game, which I didn't always succeed at.
Right. That's the trickiness of like for as it's weird for as big Metal Gear is as big as it is for like how like I guess like unapproachable of like a genre and like a game it kind of is sometimes.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know, it is it's stealth action games still, or was
Hmm.
with like obtuse boss mechanics and like how there's not that many other stealth action games where they trend increasingly towards action. Um, the further they go on, at some point, Assassin's Creed is just like Batman with where you jump off of tall buildings or something. Is it even like a stealth game? Like when was the last time it was like a stealth game? I'm not sure.
Assassin's Creed?
Yeah.
Yeah, the last one I played was the pirate one, so I don't know.
Right, right. And I don't know, maybe I'm not an expert. I have lived, near the coast my entire life, and so far as I can tell, boats are not sneaky. Um
Uh-huh.
pretty
Yeah. Yeah, that was a very strange amalgam of stuff. If I remember right, that's also the one where like there's also the part of the game where you're walking around the office of the company that's making the game that the pirate game that you're playing,
Yes.
and like after every mission, they diegetically ask you to rate the mission on a score from 1 to 5.
Okay, I mean, yes, I do remember hearing that. It is very funny of like giving your uh game feedback within the context of the game.
It's very funny. Yeah, very clever.
And yeah, there's something there. There are these little kernels of ideas sneaking around within AAA games.
Yeah, like there are these ideas like that where you think like you're always trying to figure out like how can we get feedback about the game. Obviously you just fucking you ask the player
Right.
literally while they're playing the game. And similarly, like something like in getting over it with Bennett Foddy,
Yeah.
the question of like how do I convey like through gameplay, how do I convey the intent of this game design to the player? Well, why not just like talk to them while they're playing like put your voice in the game and tell them what it is.
Right. Yeah, you can't trust that people are here for you know 2005 game maker games.
Yeah,
They,
yeah,
they
yeah.
don't have the same context for whatever you download off of like yoyogames.com or whatever their web portal people were uploading game maker games to back then.
Yeah.
And that's also like a weird. It's a thing. I think like getting over it is in a thing that I think about constantly about like games where because they're not like as easily accessible as other things, like they get like remade or like spiritually remade so often,
Hmm.
um, which is like an odd sort of thing where it's like, oh well, I mean the original things just exist, but the emulation barrier is like higher than I
And
think. Yeah,
also it's just not new. Like
right.
some people prefer for whatever reason to play the latest game instead of old games.
Yeah, right. You got to make
Or,
sure.
or actually that's probably you know what? Actually it's that you make more money with the newest game. That's
Right,
probably what it is actually.
right. You're gonna make more money making your Jet Set Radio spiritual successor than Sega is gonna be like putting out Jet Set Radio again.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, I love that game. I'm very nostalgic for it. Uh, but I feel like nostalgia has a ticking clock on it in some weird way, or like in the specific game variation of it where you can be old and feel the progression of technology. Um,
Hmm.
people are the kids these days don't feel the progression of technology in the same way. Of
Oh, thank God.
yeah,
Like I'm so glad that like the march of technology as the driver for how video games progress, like that's been so damaging, and I'm so glad that hasn't infected the new generation.
yeah. Because I've been thinking about it. It's like I'm like, oh yeah, I realize if you grew up with like PS3 360, you're like, I guess think games look better. I guess,
A little bit, yeah.
but like it's not like a jump from like Atari to NES. It's not like
Right.
whoa, the screens scroll now.
Yeah,
Uh, which is a big difference between like I guess there are more zombies in the new Dead Rising. The
yeah,
crowds are
right, right.
oh, there's got a better draw distance. It loads faster. Um, which is a huge difference between game scroll and they can save. You have battery backups,
Right, yeah.
which like fundamentally changes like design spaces of like oh no we can trust that a player will can like come back to this game later and like not have to
Yeah,
finish
yeah,
it in one session.
that enables all sorts of new designs.
Yeah, and like the new designs like that are not accessible to like most game designers like that technology allows for. You know, you and I are not going to be like being able to take advantage of the PS5 anytime soon. Uh,
Well, and frankly, like I haven't I haven't played any PS5 games actually
Right.
because I don't have a PS5. But like looking at that stuff, looking at the PS4 games, looking at the PS3 games, like those, there weren't like the only personally, I only observed one game that that was done on that generation on the 360 slash PS3 generation that couldn't have been done with worse graphics on the PS2, and it was Red Faction Guerrilla, the one with all the destructible buildings.
Right. Right.
And that design, that idea, like it was cool, but it was not influential at all. No one else picked up on it. And everything else is just like, yeah, it's an open world game. Okay, yeah, we had those.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
the technology does not enable new designs. It just enables more expensive looking games.
Right. Right. And it's like, how much does like the added like does like Omega Force being able to have like 500 guys on the screens for Dynasty Warriors, does that change what Dynasty Warriors is versus having 200 guys on the screen?
Right. Yeah.
It's still me swinging around a big spear and like killing a bunch of people. It's the same like fundamental design. Yeah.
Imagine swinging around a big spear with nobody on the screen.
Oh my god, that is
It's just it's a dancing game now.
my existential Dynasty Warriors. You've killed everybody. Then the number keeps ticking up until there's nobody left. The earth is barren except for Zhao Yun, and he has nobody left to turn the spear on but himself.
Oh, that's dark.
Yeah,
And he dances himself to death.
right. Do you? But you can't. You're just stuck in. There's no anyway. Dynasty Warriors. What a silly thing. It is very odd from like growing up to see like, oh, now there's like every franchise at some point gets a Dynasty Warriors.
The idea that like, oh yeah, what if we added 1,000 of these enemies instead of just two or whatever?
Yes.
Like
Right.
what if Super Mario Brothers had 1,000 Goombas instead of two?
I mean, Zelda did. What's stopping Mario from doing it?
Well, they did it. It was you can't play it anymore. Super Mario 35 was basically that.
Right.
And then they took it away from us.
For a very clear, important reason that no one can really quite remember, of arbitrarily limited like design or whatever.
Yeah, trying to bring scarcity back to digital media,
Which is it's such a silly, such a like scarcity is such a silly little thing of it, where it's like, I mean, besides all of the world is scarcity, whatever. But the idea of just like it's the thing I always, I mean, of course I think about a lot in the way I do things, but like the idea of like people's physical media approach is to make these fancy, elaborate, like highly unreproducible things, and I'm like, what about if we just made like not shitty versions, but like cheap versions that you can just make a million of, like forever. Like,
oh, this is so. There's something I've been saying about having hobbies, not trying to make a living, but
yes.
having hobbies, creative hobbies. I think that you are better off picking a hobby that is not scalable.
Right.
So like, if you make a song and it's a pretty good song, but it's not the best song of the past 10,000 years, which is what people are listening to on Spotify.
Right.
Nobody's going to listen. But if you make a sandwich, and it's a pretty good sandwich, it's not bad, it's a pretty good sandwich, you put it in front of somebody, like they might be thinking about the best sandwich they ever had, but it's not right there in front of them, is it? It's your sandwich, and they're going to eat it because it's pretty good.
You're right. Right. You're not.
And similarly, like you knit somebody a scarf, like that's their scarf.
Right. You're not competing with like, well, I'm not going to wear this scarf. I want to wear the scarf everyone's talking about online. I want to be part of the scarf conversation.
Right.
I'm going to just, wear the one you, right. There's so much like, and even like the space of like, oh, I'll sell a scarf or two on an Etsy shop, because I like making them.
Oh yeah, that the economy of
Right.
trying to sell like fiber arts is a nightmare.
Right. But there's also a space to be like, no, I just want to like I'll put an itch game up on occasionally. I'll charge $1 for it. But like,
Yeah.
I have piles of tax documents in front of me, and one of the things the government's going to ask me is like, how much money did you make off your hobbies? Uh, so
Yes.
the IRS is well aware that you can have a hobby space that is not a commercial project that you also make money on.
Yep.
If you're like, do want to make 80 scarves, but do not want to house them in your house forever. And it's I think it's fun sometimes to go to like local markets and be like, hey, a bunch of strangers are coming and buying my stuff that I made.
That does sound satisfying.
Without having to be like doing like your TikTok knitting and like just going straight into like monetization hustle mode.
Yep.
The space between that. But let me. Here's the thing I always forget. It comes up once every, 5, 10 shows. Is like me remembering how I delete comments and ban people.
Uh-oh.
It's just a spam like ad. Figured it out. Yeah, I just hit the little cross thing that says ban.
Well done.
Perfect. I'm a Twitch streamer. I can't wait to get my next $50 from Twitch in the next 7 years.
Oh, do they pay out?
I
wasn't expecting that.
Well, I'll say if you do a show every Saturday or so, around your 100th and 120th Saturday, maybe 130th Saturday, you'll get $50.
Wow.
Only like
And
2
that's
years.
with what? Oh, right now you've got 11 viewers. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm in the top 5% of Twitch streamers probably.
Heck yeah.
But speaking of endless hustle, work for hobbies for fun, all these sorts of things, Jim, I've got 2 important questions that are actually both related to that lead-in in their own small way.
Mm-hmm.
The first is, and these are the standard Indiepocalypse questions that have been passed on to me from guests, which are, first up, what's your favorite type of rock?
Favorite type of rock?
Yes.
Oh man, and you don't mean the music.
It's
you mean
up to your interpretation. It could be.
Okay, all right. That's whatever one I'm holding right now. It's whatever
Okay.
one I'm about to throw into the lake.
Okay, yes. No, that is a Lake Rocks. The nebulous Lake Rock is a popular rock
Yeah, like
choice.
you want like you one nice kind of rock is like the flat one that you can skip.
Yeah.
I like those.
We got all these fucking rural guests. I'm realizing rock skipping feels increasingly like an extremely like rural pastime.
Oh, I don't get to do it that often.
Yeah,
Like I don't leave the house much.
sure. But the access to lakes and a house to leave that has access to lakes
Yes.
at some point growing up. And the second question, do you have a favorite Toho character?
Oh, that's the like the bullet hell shmup that
Yes.
uses like really really exciting MIDI music.
Correct.
I have played a couple of those games, but I never finished any, and I don't remember any characters.
That's a
Oh, here we go.
perfect.
Zune,
Yes.
spelled Z-U-N. That's my favorite.
Yes. No, he seems like he's got to figure it out. If you Google him, he's holding a giant stein of beer and seems to be having a good time. Which, that's...
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. I'm looking at this picture. He's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. He looks very happy.
Yeah, seems like a healthy face. When I think of healthier faces of game development, I think of him. I think of oh god, I'm blanking on a Jeff Minter.
Right. Yeah.
Of just like people just doing their own thing, minding their own business, largely.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're on the Fediverse, Jeff Minter is an excellent follow. He basically toots just about the sheep he has and the curry he eats at the pub.
Yes, that was my experience when I was still using when I and he were still using Twitter. It's like what a nice like if people are arguing about like I don't know graphics or yellow paint or whatever, and it's like, hey, look at that sheep there, man.
It's
Got to figure it out.
Yep.
And I think that's also like the secret to like a lot of people's like longevity, you know, of like
Oh, just being in a good mood.
right,
Yeah.
and like kind of like divorcing yourself from like the regular like hustle space or whatever.
And like if you can manage being in a good mood, like even if you don't live longer because of it, it's still worth it.
Yeah,
Imagine like imagine if being in a shitty mood made you live longer. You just be in a bad mood the whole time.
right, right. I always uh, I think constantly, and I mention on the show constantly. There's both an interview excerpt and a comic he made himself, Shigeru Mizuki, about sleeping, um, and it's
Huh?
him yelling at other like his like manga contemporaries about he's like they're talking about how long they're up all night, burning the midnight oil, so to speak. He's like, I sleep 8 hours a day. He's yelling at them the power of sleep, and then it ends with him being anyway they're all dead, and you know they all died at like 50 in their 50s, maybe 60s. He lived till he's 95,
Oh man, yeah.
and it's like
You
you know
probably got more work done in that time.
yeah, absolutely. It's like hey, I'd rather take my time, you know, maybe reach this real success or whatever theoretically at like 50 than burn myself out on something. And then I mean, because also, you know, the indie game space is built on the bones of 8 million single game studios, you know,
Yeah.
of a billion people who like have enough runway to make one game, but it's
Yeah.
not successful enough to make a second, even though it seems from the outside
Oh,
to be successful.
and on top is Balatro holding
Right.
the earth, crushing
Right.
everybody beneath it.
And then in like 3 years, we'll all forget about Balatro. But man, that
Oh
guy
yeah,
got his.
then Balatro will be the biggest skeleton, and
Yes.
then above that will be
But
an even bigger one.
but that guy seems like he got enough of that money to not have to worry about anything ever again.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, nothing better to just like get a bunch of money and not have to worry about ever working again. Maybe all at some point never have to work again.
Right, right, right. Well, the other way you could do it is you could do the MC Hammer thing and just hire all your friends.
Yeah.
Just take everybody up with you, and then go bankrupt in 2 years when you stop having hits.
Right, but you know, you brought all your friends up, and then hopefully some of your friends have hits, and they bring you back up, and
Oh, I mean, and if not, like,
yeah,
then at least you have like the social capital of like you're the guy who hired everybody for 2 years, and then you can go sleep on their couch.
exactly. I always think about an anecdote from listening to a podcast about how you make it. The podcast was not about how you make it in Hollywood. They were joking about it, and they said the best way to make it is to have a roommate that makes it, and
Oh yeah,
and it's just like, hey, like just wait till one of your friends gets good, and then like hopefully they'll have like the decency of being like, oh yeah, I made it. Let me bring everyone up with me. I
yeah,
think
yeah. It's the right thing to do.
I think you sometimes don't run into that as much as in games because people are coming from like spaces of like more money by default. You know, they're already coming from like upper middle class to like upper class backgrounds. You know, and I think that
Yeah, I
instinct.
wonder. Yeah, I wonder how true that still is. Like
Yeah,
certainly, 10 years ago, you basically couldn't make a game without being a programmer or knowing a programmer, and
right,
programmers did tend to come from like middle class backgrounds.
right, because you had to
But
have computers, which are expensive.
right, yeah, well, exactly, and you also had to have like the free time. You weren't like getting a summer job to help pay the bills. Um, but nowadays, you don't need that skill set in order to ship a game.
Yeah,
And I wonder, like, has that how much has that? But of course, you still need the free time.
right.
How much has that democratized, game like commercially successful game creation? I guess.
Yeah, I feel like there's gonna be. I'm waiting for these next like 5 or 10 years. I feel like the game landscape's gonna like change a lot. Um, like
That's
through
interesting. Yeah.
through like democratized tools, or I think what I've been feel like I've been seeing for a long time is you'll see the more of like the splinter of like commercial is off more in its own space, and there's like a healthier like understood alternative scene, you know. Um,
Well, for me, like it's Pico 8, right?
right, right,
The like people making games just as like fully as a hobby. I do think that, and also I've been making games as a greeting card. Like for the past few years, I've been sending out I've been making short Pico 8 games as
Yeah.
a to send as greeting cards for winter solstice. And I really do think that that's a much healthier way to approach games as a as an art hobby,
Yeah.
and then trying to make a living from it.
Right. There's there's too much like narrowness, I think, perhaps, in what people think games as a medium like have to be.
Yeah.
Um, I ostensibly enjoy marketing 1% more than the people whom I'm marketing, and that is a slim 1%. Uh, I mean, really, I like going to shows. That's like why I've like largely like done with online. But it's like I like going to shows. I had when I was at I published like a Pico 8 collection for somebody, like kind of like a short story collection sort of approach.
Yeah.
And a guy was like, "Oh yeah. Oh, these are all like he's excited that here's a collection of Pico 8 games and like tweet cards and things like that." And I had a dude who was like, bought something on Friday, came back on Saturday, being like, "We played this stuff in a hotel room. Give us more."
That's awesome.
Yeah, and like people are into weird stuff. Anyway, Jim, we're gonna go to a break. Um, Thank you for joining me here today. This all
Yeah,
breezes by
glad
so
to be here.
quickly. We'll be back on the other half of about 2 minutes and 26 seconds. Goodbye for now. Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was, of course, Minutemen with Corona. I've had Corona on my brain lately, or just Minutemen. I mean, as easy as it is for them to constantly find their way onto my brain, which is often. But we are back with our next guest, and we are back in the comfortable camp of Indiepocalypse with issue number 60 with Year Unknown. It's Julian. Julian, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. Mostly just chilling.
Yeah, perfect. That's honestly my preferred way to spend a weekend.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I had nothing there.
Oh, okay, perfect. No worry. So now that we've returned back to that comfort, I have um a question. I can go back to the comfort of the question of the standard Indiepocalypse question, which is, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
Honestly, I don't know. I forgot. I think I was just like looking for just like because I was making You Are Known for a while, and I was looking for
Yeah.
ways like to like get this to people, and I found Indiepocalypse through some means of searching, and I
Right.
added it to like a little list of like these are these are cool things like I should submit to or something when like the game's
Okay.
finished. And I eventually did. And I mean it's a cool little thing. So and I bought like a couple of the issues I think. Um
Yeah. So
so
yeah, it is definitely. I mean, it's a cool little thing made of like 10 cool little things. One of those things is I guess
yeah.
not little, not a little thing. I've been when I've
It's just kind of little
yeah. I guess when I'm
short.
I say because I say that because when I've been pitching it at events, I use the term superstructure a lot.
Yeah.
Um, if the spaces in Euro Unknown qualify as superstructures, I'm not sure what
Megastructure?
megastructure. That's the word I was looking
Megastructure.
for.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's like what I say, so that's good. Uh yeah.
Yeah,
Um
but
anything particular you want? Oh, sorry.
I was saying we're dancing around these things. Yeah. How would you describe Euro Unknown if someone here was unfamiliar with it?
Yeah, so it's basically just it's kind of a walking sim. Although
Yeah.
I don't like that term, but
Right,
whatever.
right. That I mean,
It
that's
exists.
it's the curse of video game descriptions being gameplay led.
Yeah, like whatever roguelike means.
Right.
But it uh yeah, it's essentially walking sim, very story driven. You go around to terminals, and there are two uh, AI characters that they're written out, not real AI.
Yes, that's
For that now.
it says on your store
Um,
page too, because that's like
yeah,
the
I put that on. I'm like, I don't want people to think that I'm that guy.
right. That's like kind of this curse of like modern. One of the
Yeah,
many curses of AI is that AI means things that is not like
yeah.
ChatGPT. You know.
Term has been destroyed in the last few years.
Yeah.
But in any case, you talk to these two characters who happen to be AI in the story, and you choose which one you want to talk to at all the terminals. Each terminal having different information about things, and you find out this is like way, way far in the future. Humanity has essentially like done all of the stuff that they want to do. Entropy is like not a problem anymore. Everything lasts forever, and but there's nobody around, and so you're the only one there. You don't know why. That's kind of the inciting kind of start of the plot. So yeah,
Yeah, and it involves massive spaces and uh emptiness, and so
yeah,
and it is like
the-
such what's the word I'm looking for? There is. So how did you get like where you're like, oh, this is the thing I want to, because it just looking at your page previously, it's like, oh, this is like your first like like larger project. Um,
yeah. I did make a game before called Subdivide, and it's
yes.
not good, but it's fine. I shouldn't like
Right, but I
be
mean
that harsh on myself. But yeah,
that's the
my first
part of
game.
like the natural progression of an artist of like, oh, I hate my work forever.
Yeah, no.
Unless somebody else says they hate them, like, wait a minute, no, this is good actually. I don't know what you're talking about.
um, yeah, so that was actually something I made like my senior year of high school, and I'm like in my last semester of college actually right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
right.
so I'm glad I got that. I got it released before I graduated. um, but yeah, Subdivide, it was like kind of a puzzle platformer thing. It started from like a game jam, and I was like, I should make like a full game because I like make games, and I should like try to do that more.
Right.
And so that was kind of all that really was. And then Zero Known was my first like I sat down after Subdivide, and I was like, okay, what do I want to like I want to make a game like I want to make,
Right.
um I really like narratives like in games. I feel like there's a lot of potential for like storytelling.
Right.
I
Because
remember when I played Portal 2 for the first time, and I was like, the only other games I played were like New Super Mario Bros, and I was like, oh my god, games can have a story.
you're
uh,
right. That's you're talking in the first segment about people come different generations of people. 4 years ago, I was still long graduated from college. You know.
yeah,
Uh,
I feel tiny, I feel young.
yes. No. I mean, this show, it both keeps me in touch with the young generation, but and I was like, it doesn't make me feel old, even though I'm probably sometimes twice as old as people, or close to it, in my 30s.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
no,
it's not
yeah.
um no, I don't know. It's like it's weird because once you get past a certain age, it's like you don't you stop like caring about people's ages, like
Right. It kind of like it's once you can't be 30 under 30 anymore, you're like, huh, why even bother?
yeah.
Or
um
but also,
I still got a few years. I can try.
yeah. And then you can put that
uh
on the thing, and then I can look at it and I go, I don't think I trust anyone who puts that on their profile that they were 30 under
yeah,
30.
I don't know if I don't know if I want to. uh
Yeah, there's a certain like, oh, okay, so you come with some kind of silver spoon, very rarely do I feel like people are like, oh yeah, I just came from nothing and became a 30 under 30. It's like, oh, you had a lot of space to work in here.
uh
But
Yeah, but I forgot what we were talking about before. We got
No,
on this sidetrack.
now. Now were you going to school for game design, or just like were you doing game design on the
Um,
side?
so I'm going for computer science.
Right, the more sensible.
Although, yeah, so, because I do want like to be able to get a job.
Yes,
Uh, which
and
now is even with that is questionable. But
right.
um,
Right, you have to get in early
the
before where you can still be a computer designer, and they're not going to try and hire you as like uh,
yeah,
uh,
AI trainer,
an
whatever.
machine learning code rank. No, what's the word? What's the word? A prompt editor or whatever.
Yeah, it was God. Um, yeah, so that's what I went for. Although there is, I'm going to RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology,
Okay,
and they do have like supposedly one of the better game design programs.
I I think I've
Although,
met some people from like the Rochester area. They've come because
yeah,
I'm out of New England, which is
oh yeah,
not
I mean,
far.
there's a pretty big like game dev community here, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Like there's a Rock Game Dev is a like kind of local group, and they do like events and things and meetups, and I always go to those because it's like really cool. There's a lot of like really cool game devs in the area. Even though it's not really like a hub of like it's kind of like all of these Rust Belt towns are kind of like
yeah,
there used to be a lot of like tech here, and then they kind of failed, and
right.
then now there isn't. Like Kodak and IBM and all that like kind of based around here, and then they kind of messed up.
But I think that's
But
like
no, there's still like a lot of really nice like cool game devs and stuff. Sorry, what were you
yeah.
saying?
No, I think that's just gonna happen more and more. Of like arts communities don't have to be like dependent on there being like imagine if local music scenes you like needed to have recording studios everywhere,
Yeah,
and it's just like
uh,
would not work in the same way. Um,
yeah. I
but
mean, things are like kind of like there's a lot of like smaller, like
yeah,
kind of companies and some like indie studios and stuff. And so it's it's interesting time, I guess. But
yeah, of finding like these different spaces and having different like they're always being like never hopefully no matter where you are there'll always be like a local game dev scene to some degree
yeah,
doing the equivalent of like playing songs at your local VFA
yeah,
whatever that equivalent is for games.
yeah. I mean, it's just wherever I end up, which like, I have no idea at this point. It's
Right.
like I'm gonna need that community. Like that's a really important thing for me.
Yeah,
It's like
you could have the luxury of like being able to just like I guess it's different for people whether like work from home. I like going to my weird little work box that I work in and then going home.
yeah,
There's
I
like
don't know. I'm kind of like mixed because I've gone on like internships and co-ops and things, and like
yeah,
a couple of them were there was one that was remote, a couple that were like hybrid. There's one that I had to be in person for, so it's like I don't know. I don't know what I prefer, honestly.
right. And I imagine it also extremely depends on your like what the vibe of in person is.
Yeah, definitely. Um,
Because if it is like that kind of like babysitting preschool expectation that some places
yeah,
feel like they have.
but um, yeah. Fortunately, I never had like a horrible situation, which is good.
Right,
Yeah,
right. No, I mean, I worked a lot of retail. I would not recommend it
yeah.
if it can be
Um,
avoided, but often cannot be avoided.
yeah, I've done a tiny bit of on campus work at like in food service, and not fun, but
No. I've fortunately never done food service, which seems like a whole
yeah,
other. whole other thing.
Especially when it's like on campus, because they're just like nobody wants to do it.
Right.
It's all college students, and you just grab whoever they can, and it's
Yeah, and I think you're probably working on people have like kind of an expectation that it's like, oh yeah, this is another student, like, you know, the same like customers, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, it's fine. I was never like public facing, and I didn't do it for that long, so
Right.
it's fine. I don't. You don't have to feel bad for me.
I never I never want to have a public facing job again. I am quite done with them.
Yes. But yeah, so like they have the game design program here, but honestly, I think any game design program is kind of going to be weird a bit,
Right.
because it's like what do you teach? Like you teach game design, but like what is a like a major in game design like only look like? So obviously there's like other stuff. There's like programming and like 3D design kind of courses and level design stuff.
Yeah,
And you get this weird mix of
and
things,
it means so
and
many
you
things
never,
about like from depending on what studio or what school you're going to, it means completely different things.
yeah, like I bet if you went to like, I know like DigiPen is like the big like, we I know now we know like it kind of sucks actually,
Right.
but it's still the big like game dev school,
Yeah.
and like if you get a degree from there, it's completely different from getting a game design degree here.
Right.
So like I don't know, it's just
Which is
they teach a bunch of like web dev stuff because they want to make sure like if you can't get like a game dev job, you can get like a web dev job.
right, which is one of those things that in theory will also hopefully like never really go away. Like you can always kind of find
Yeah.
more web development jobs because there will always be websites.
So it's just odd. Well, of course, the nice thing is, even though I'm a CS major, there's still all the game dev like stuff there
Right.
for those students that I can just kind of try to take advantage of, which is nice. But yeah,
Yeah, you don't need to have like a full like game. Right, you get the degree that is adjacent to yours, but where
yes.
you'll get where you'll do the same work, but get paid 5 times as much, and have better and have in theory better job security.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to work in games if I can.
Right.
Just we'll see.
It just needs
Actually, that's one thing.
probably be a little
Oh,
healthier.
sorry.
No, I was just saying, ideally, if it was a healthier space.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like I don't want to work at like, I don't know, some like, I don't even know. I don't know what companies are like bad places to work anymore. It's like
Right. Is it?
depends on
I mean,
like which
is
studio.
it's just
Exactly.
all of them,
I don't want to accidentally call someone out that like isn't
isn't call outable or whatever. Right.
I'm gonna name some people are getting mad at me. But yeah, like I don't want to work somewhere that's like a bad working environment if it's like, oh, I'm working in games, but it sucks.
Right. It's like, oh, it's miserable and I don't get paid anything, but I am working in games.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
Right. And yeah, hopefully there'll be people will have to, get a healthier little space within games and a more comfortable space. So he's like, oh yeah, I'm just working a job and I don't have to worry about like, does my job still exist when the game ships,
Yeah. And the other thing that's nice is like with Year Unknown, and I make music too, and
Yeah.
I have a few streams of like passive income, which it's not a lot.
Right. But it's also not zero.
But yeah, it's something that's there if I ever, need a backup for some reason. And that's always nice to have is like some sort of like just something.
Right. These small little like drip feeds, if they're of like, oh yeah, I got like 20 more bucks from Year Unknown this month,
Yeah. I mean that's why Indiepocalypse is great because it's like, I mean Year Unknown. I feel kind of bad because Year Unknown has seen like like on Steam. It's not like a runaway success, but it's like there is some like it has over like 10 reviews, which is like
Right,
the
which
threshold
is
to get a
we're
rating.
right. We're talking about how many games
Yeah, I
have
was
0 reviews.
yeah, like it's gotten above slightly above the like sea of just like I don't want to say like shovelware games, but like
Right,
it's
but
like
it's
just the games that like really just don't get anything on Steam, right?
yeah,
So
and it's
um,
something that's impossible to tell what one of those games will be.
yeah, and that's like kind of what makes Indiepocalypse great. Is like it lets the people who make those games that like are actually interesting, but probably wouldn't succeed on Steam, like get something from that, and that I appreciate that.
Right.
But I feel kind of bad because like I don't really need that. But
Sure. But I'll be I'm a real long term like kind of guy. So in theory, Indiepocalypse will outlive everyone else's their other releases. As
valve will collapse
yeah,
and you will live on.
right. It's like there's as soon as that money comes through. I forgot to do mass payments. I have to have all the money sitting in my PayPal account, so I had to transfer a bunch of it. But
Yeah.
in Monday, theoretically, everyone's going to get like somewhere between $6 to $10 from
Hey,
from both a mixture of the Pledge Drive and Magfest.
not bad.
No, no. I mean, I realized when I was doing it, I realized, it takes now at this point, it takes a lot of money to make sure that everybody gets one payout if I split it all evenly.
Yeah.
Like a surprisingly high amount. But that's just issues of scale. There's an Indiepocalypse of Indiepocalypses. There's too many. There's too many editions of this thing even. But
Like a Indiepocalypse, like how like Jackbox has like the mega bundle or whatever.
right,
Like an Indiepocalypse mega bundle.
I do one of those every time it has a sale, and sometimes people will drop that $400 or $500 on the full catalog, and I'm like, hey, salutes to the madmen out there with that money.
It is a lot of games. Like
Yeah,
it's worth it probably.
yeah. No, I
Um,
like these. There are there are tons. 600 games. That's 600 games is a lot of games at this point.
yeah.
And also, it's like a completable number of games. Like, uh, when people ask me, I mean, I don't know how long any given issue is, but I average them around probably like a few hours at the most. Occasionally, you'll get an extra long game in there, but generally, each one is only a few hours. And like 180 hours is a lot of hours, but it's not an insurmountable. That's like one Assassin's Creed or whatever.
Yeah. um so really it should be $60 because of game length. No.
Yeah, exactly.
um
We should just change all of game pricing to like a length based thing. Like people
oh
don't
god.
decide the price of their game. It's all determined by length.
God. So this is like I ended up making Your Unknown $10, and that was like I originally didn't want to. I wasn't going to, and then
Right.
I like asked people, and they were like, kind of like giving them. I think what's like kind of the new advice now is like, don't undervalue your game.
Right.
It's like if you make it too low of a price, like especially on Steam, people are gonna like think of it as a game of that price, and then like kind of like categorize it in that like lower class of games. So I was
Right.
like, screw it, it's $10. If people say that it's worth that much, it's worth that much. And
Yeah. No, I $10 is like a good range, and I when I sell at events, I sell things completely like pretty much like sight unseen to most people. Like they don't know what the games are, but they think there's
yeah,
cool covers, and
um,
they'll just like buy stuff for that price. Because
I mean it's weird because it's like if you go like in person like somewhere like spending $10 on like something like isn't like a weird thing to do. Like it's like very like it's like an impulse buy, like
right.
I go to a booth and someone's like, "Here's something that you can waste an hour on. Give me $10." I'll be like, "Yeah, sure, like hell yeah." But it's not like if it's on Steam, there's some weird like mental
Right.
difference, right? Like,
Right. Right. I think that's like the problem you run into with like the internet is the everything space, and then if you're going to like a mag fest, you're going there to like check out the stuff there. Like you're there for the stuff that's there.
yeah. Um, so this is so. I should bring this up.
Yeah.
I'm actually I usually don't go to conferences because of all the reasons you were talking about before with Jim, and also because like I don't know, it's hard to schedule things.
Right.
But I'm actually going to GDC this year because Eurozone was nominated for an IGF.
Right. Right. So
um,
yeah, and that can pay for like the
which is
because you get like
yeah, so yeah, you get the like pass and everything, and which is insane, by the way. I don't know how that happened.
right. Just keep piling up the list of the IGF list that is just interchangeable with Indiepocalypse contributor list or whatever.
Yeah. Is there like a list somewhere of like the overlap?
I have not made it, but it is like I think the last time I looked, I think the Nuovo was like 80% or whatever. It was like, all these people are past contributors.
Oh, that's really funny.
And
This is just for the student award, so it's not.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the list, and it's like everything is like there's like Cilantro, right? It's like that's not anywhere close. And then all the student games are like relatively unknown, so it's like okay, I could kind of understand that. Like it's like
but I mean, I think they're getting a little better, but generally, especially like 3 to 4 years ago, I would look at IGF and be like, student awards, Nuovo awards, you can forget the rest of it, like they're probably like fine games, like the pure restraint to put Balatro in the honorable mentions for the grand prize is like, I nod and go, yes, that's
yeah. I was surprised, like they're like Mouthwashing didn't get a nomination, and I haven't played it yet, so no spoilers. But I have heard it's very good, and it's on my to play list, which is too long right now.
Right. But it's also
I was really surprised. I'm like that.
There's also a certain degree of, I think, interestingness of like, oh yeah, well, does the IGF just need to be a rehashing of commercial success, So I wonder if there's an intention on that part from like judges of like, no, we should like not just make these like, oh, these are the highest selling indie games of this year, or people coming from like obvious like well supported backgrounds and like studios with funding and publishing and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, part of it I think is like just the submission process is very like you just kind of like submit like they just got get games at random, the judges, and
Right.
so there's very, at least probably isn't much like bias in terms of like what the games are. Like they're not like seeking things out or like looking at the story pages, probably, at least I don't know who they are. So like to that aspect, I think that's like maybe part of it, but I don't know, like if they take into account at all like the popularity for like either for or against a certain game, like
right,
this game is too popular, you don't include it.
Right. It's in some degrees like sometimes that's how I would like think about like, well, yeah, I let's use this platform for something to bring more stuff. I was just looking at student game Slot Waste is the other another past contributor.
Yeah, that's like the platformer, right?
No, that's like kind of like an installation-y sort of. It's one of those things when people ask me what's this game about, I go, well, it's like art. Yeah, it's like art. It's like it's one of those. It does not fit into like the cleanliness of like video game genres, um, and like in the way that's often used as a shorthand for people, um, which is too often. But speaking of shorthands, we use shorthands for a lot of things, including rocks. Julian, what's your favorite type of rock?
I really like geodes.
Perfect. Those are the ones you
I
crack
do have
open. Those are the ones you crack open, right?
Yes, they have
Yes.
the shiny crystals in them. I have a couple of them um, back at home from Texas.
Oh,
Uh,
those are a common selection, and also I feel like the most common ones for people to say, "I have one of those in this room right now," kind of thing.
that's okay. So I'm not unique. All right.
No, well, listen, we're not here about being unique. How unique can we be among billions of people? You know,
True. I mean, they are cool rocks.
they are
Like,
cool rocks. Yeah, there's the innate appeal to you crack open a rock and there's a cooler rock inside of it.
yeah. Um,
But now, follow up, secondary question: do you have a favorite Toho character?
I've never played so
Perfect.
so I have no idea. I don't know any of the characters.
That is
All
an
I know is Bad Apple.
yes, Bad Apple. That is Toho indeed. But also, it's an acceptable
Yes.
answer to say no. I do not.
Okay, then no.
Perfect. Well,
Sorry.
no need to apologize. Well, thank you for joining me here.
Apologize for the Toho fans.
Listen. You're just a future Toho fan. Uh, you have the potential to become one.
All right.
It's how I see it. But that said, we're going to be going on break. Thank you for joining me here. We'll be back in about 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Goodbye for now.
Sounds good.
Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Cloud Nothings with Stay Useless. We are here with our final guest of the show, who you may know from Indiepocalypse issue number 58 with Centrist Simulator. It's Yo252. Yo. How you doing today, Yo?
Hi, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. Now, you've had time to prepare for this first question, and where the answer has increasingly been like, I don't know, as it was for the last segment. So I have to ask you, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
I mean, first of all, you have to expect that as the fanzine grows,
Yes.
you'll have this answer more and more because of its history.
Right.
And
That's
so for me, you like I want to say I don't remember, but I can remember the story if you want. I don't remember the details, which will not help you optimize your conversion rate or whatever.
Yes.
But I can walk you through what brought me there, and you'll see it's a mindset. It's a good story. So after university, I was working as a software engineering for a couple of years because I wanted to ensure having an apartment and stuff.
Right.
Having money helps.
yeah. Food and shelter very handy
This-
as a human being.
Exactly. Right? So I focused on being profitable first, and after a while, I started to crave doing something more creative on my spare time.
Yeah.
And it came to the point where I could afford to take a couple of years off, or like to be a bit more adventurous, let's say. So I started to look into the indie game scene. I thought I knew my basis, but so that was something like a year or two ago. Every day I learn new stuff. I learn new names, new games, new stuff like that. So I started going into this loop of discovering new things, then discovering who made them, and then what else did they make? What else
Right.
did they collaborate with? And so your name came up quite fast, let's say, because you do cross a lot of paths with Indiepocalypse, and that's what brought me to here.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that is. I mean, really, it is like, that question is to like, how can I keep this going, and how do people find so that developers can continue to find it. The question of how can someone find it in terms of buying it, that's a question I have long forgotten about and stopped caring about. Because that is
I mean, that's a very important. Well,
right.
how people find out about you is the crucial question. I mean, we
Yes.
were talking in the previous segment about all those games that are on Steam and nobody sees, or even like it feels like nowadays your very existence, is predicated on having good PR and having a good
Right.
platform.
Yeah. Right.
So, I understand.
So that you can still create content, you know. And
Content is the fuel.
so that people will still remember you. And I always think about the idea of, you know, because really it's inherently like untrue that people need to, you know, be constantly online and like making stuff for people to care about their work, because how many people are there that have been dead for centuries whose work we still pay attention to, you know?
Yeah, and it's more and more blatant by the day because there's so much thing going out, so you don't have to put out too many things.
Right. Right. And so it's like, oh
But
yeah.
but that being said, it also helps you learn
Right,
in
right.
a way doing like stuff.
Oh yeah, no, no. I think people should make a lot of stuff. It's the it's the extraneous stuff, the make sure you're posting 5 times a week or whatever. You know, those kind of like marketing sorts of bits to it.
Yeah, and it's more and more replaced by a fee, by money, by subscriptions and stuff. I don't
Yeah.
know how it is on social media nowadays, but
Right, right. And it's like at some
sometimes
point,
effort is not even enough.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I I think, and it's the weird thing is I think a lot about like some of like the biggest whatever game personalities that I see, and how I don't know what any of their games are, and I never see any people ever talk about their games, but I see them all the time talk.
Who do you have in mind?
That's mean. I'm not. We're
Yeah,
not.
that's true.
We're not here to throw shade at frequent posters, you know. But
And then there's people who've made the field of video games evolve and that are often talked about, but who are not that much active, and that's also
right,
a big contribution on its own, right?
right,
Thinking
right,
of like Will Wright or Sid Meier.
right, or even like, you know, Jeff Minter, from
Yeah.
like he's not usually wading in on game development discourse, you know.
I mean,
But
I think that's the healthiest thing you can do, right? Take a step back and look at the big picture. Not only for game development, I think this can apply to like most domains and even daily life. I think with social media, we've gone too fast. Essentially, basically, you need to have a bit of uh, insight.
yeah, right. It's kind of, you know, you're moving from like thing to thing to thing, and you don't really like stop ever.
Yeah. I when I look at like indie game industry, there's so many gems, and I feel like we don't get the time to digest them as much as we used to, just because the next one is right around the corner, and it is a blessing and a curse in a way. I mean, I
Right.
still have a long time to go before I've done all the things that I want.
Yeah, I haven't touched um, modern games in, you know, besides the work I do for curating the apocalypse, I haven't touched modern games in years, you know. Like I can't. I'm trying to think of the last time I played a new release might be Perfect Tides, if I'm remembering correctly. Like I don't know my next modern release before that. Um, And it's just, it's not like I'm not even playing games. There are tons of games that have already existed that are still like. It's like the play everything curse.
You can use the backlog. You don't have to play games only from this year.
right, and you don't, and also it's like it's the curse of playing everything, and that's why I think so little stuff gets so little space. And people are like, well, I've got to play all the good stuff that came out this year, and it's like, well, you don't. You can just like take your time.
Yeah, and at the same time, I feel like there's this process that means that people are allowed to be a little bit more experimental, to try new niches, maybe, I don't know, to create even new genres. Like, I don't really know. Well, the auto battler genre a little bit, but that's well, anyway. So I just mean that it in all this phase, there's less pressure, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of competition, but there's also a lot of you can explore corners of the design space that weren't accessible before.
Right. And speaking of those corners, if people are unfamiliar, how would you describe a centrist simulator?
That's a very good question. I think I would go at it if you'll allow me by its genesis, like the idea behind it.
Yes.
Because if you look at the gameplay, it's basically an auto clicker. A cookie clicker clone that I still try to put a bit of innovation on the basic formula, because there's it's against the race against the clock. It's a race against the clock, so you have to. It involves a little bit of evolution compared to the staple of the genre. But so my idea was to make what I wanted to do was to make a project about the status quo bias, the fact that I read a lot of philosophy and stuff like that, and sometimes I see an interesting correspondence with mechanics or something that can be expressed best by a video game. So here I wanted to think about the way that normality seems to be the default. Human beings get used to the new normal very fast. If you think about COVID, and both during COVID and after COVID, we changed our routines stunningly fast at the scale of a lifetime.
I
kind of change that it was.
I worked in a public-facing job from 2020 to like 2023. It was I saw all those little plastic barriers getting thrown up around work. All these.
So the human brain is very, very adaptable and thinks that your day-to-day is the default. But actually, so I wanted to show that it was actually pretty extreme, the day-to-day that we're living with, if you think of the climate crisis. But it also works for tons of other issues. Just this one has a lot of data behind I could tap into. I almost felt bad for focusing on climate crisis in the game, considering how many potential problems they are. And so what I wanted to do is find a way to express with gameplay the fact that maybe some path is just wrong and you have to change it as fast as possible. You need to make like big changes fast.
Yeah.
Which is why also climate crisis was a good example for this. And I ended up with this cookie clicker clone because it's the human urge to see number go up, right? It's, and I want to twist that. So that's a cornerstone of like the processes behind the climate crisis and the stuff like that. So I want to reappropriate that and twist it to see the other way. So basically, to stop being abstract and talk about what the game actually is for.
No, I think that's part of like an important way that we need to start like talking about games in the more like abstract, because if we said, oh, it's an idle cookie clicker like game like that, yes, that kind of like describes what the game is, but it doesn't really like.
Yeah, and there's a fair amount of people that will stop there, and I expect that to happen, but they would completely miss both both the ending of the game and the whole story behind it. I just said, but that's life. You can't make a thing that works for everyone.
Yes, yeah.
So the game is this this clicker mechanic where you see environmental damage go up and you have to match it with technological progress. But there is a twist. A trick is that you cannot win the game ever
Right.
under normal circumstances. What you have to do, the only way to win, is at the very beginning when the game prompts you for the difficulty, which is, do you want an easy life, a normal life, do you want some hardship, or do you want to do the impossible? You have to be ready to do the impossible, and then it prompts you like, okay, do you want to do big changes to society, like completely rework it from the ground up? And if you say yes, it will give you a pretty sizable malus at the beginning because it's a big change, but on the long term, you are allowed to succeed. You are allowed to win. You can win, actually.
Right.
And it's actually not that hard to if you've made the right choice.
But yeah, and there is like a kind of like you're like you're saying there's so much space to like approach something like, oh, I can approach this as a game, where maybe it wouldn't make the same sense to approach something as like, as a different like as a film or something, for instance.
Yeah. Originally, I came to games because from writing, I used to just write normal text, and then I realized that text could be even more powerful if it was augmented in different ways.
Right.
And little by little, I came to do mostly multimedia stuff. But truth be told, like a video game involves so many things. I really want to stress how much of a miracle it is that any indie game, solo game project gets made, because you have to have assets, music, etc. And it's so much things to juggle.
It's such like it's such a combination of like everything else, and then you also threw programming on top of it.
Yeah, well, we were talking with Jim about how Pico 8 allows you to do less crazy big projects, more focused projects. I think that's a very good, healthy result of the fact that games tend to, like, not always, but you can do so much complexity and so much big projects.
Right. In a way, it's kind of like... it like the game design approach traditionally is like, if you're looking at like Unreal or Unity or something, it's like approaching like music composition, and you're just given a full orchestra, and you're like, okay, you have to use all these instruments. So it's like Pico is like, here's a guitar, that's all you need, make something with it. It's much simpler for someone to do.
It's much more manageable.
Right.
And it's also a little bit, it is retro in aesthetic, but also in the meta, in how things used to get made with much smaller teams. Right.
And yeah, I think it's one of those other things of scales. As things scale up, it's you're having much larger teams working on much larger projects, when you could still like operate very leanly and still make interesting, like a lot of those. Don't believe what people tell you. A lot of older games are like not worse. It's not like, oh, we learned how to make good games now, which is sometimes the issue I have with like spiritual successors sometimes, where they believe they're upgrading something, or like, which just means they're like sanding off the interesting edges sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it comes down to the fact that games are really like do a lot of different things. You have the mechanics at so many different levels, the minute-to-minute experience, the hour-to-hour experience. You have the music, you have the looks, you have so many different factors that you can really excel at one. And what we've learned is basically to rise up the tide of like making more polished things, for sure, making less mistakes, less egregious mistakes in game design and UX and stuff like that. But really, you have these kernels of gameplay. in old generations that are unmatched to this day. So.
Yeah, right. There are like so many little things going on that have a space for you to mess around in. I think people are rediscovering things. I think that kind of like classical pendulum swing back to like older stuff of, especially where like and I think in a weird way it helps that the game canon is so terrible, in that it is primarily focused on the last 5-10 years of commercial games, so you don't, it's like,
Yeah, but what makes me scared about this pendulum swinging back is that you have to appreciate the things for what they were and not
Yeah.
do a remaster with like
Right.
polished graphics and like change the formula completely. That
Yes.
happens way too often.
Yeah, and I think my optimistic thing is that people are, I hear people going back, just like anecdotally, people playing older games. But like the good part of that canon not existing is like they don't know what are the quote unquote good games,
It is a chance because you get to be the guy who knows and like
Right.
whoa people.
and I think it's cool because it like also like reevaluates a lot of games that were like 7 out of 10s back then, but then people go, oh no, actually these are like like super interesting games or whatever that just like did not, that's From Software in general, of people.
Yeah.
They were the kings of 5 to 7 out of 10s until like Dark Souls came out. And now people are like, oh, actually, they're all really good. And it's like, well, maybe they were good back then, too. We weren't ready for it. Or, like, it just didn't fit into, like...
You were looking in a different way. Didn't fit in.
Right.
And there was also the fact you mentioned From Software. There was a... translation was very hard back then. The world wasn't as globalized as it is. And
Yes.
so the Japanese game might play completely different. So maybe it's just a matter of mindset, too.
Right. It's like, I mean, I remember... renting Half-Life 2 for the PlayStation 2 and like having to like not understanding left stick, right stick, like first person controls, because it was the first time I had ever played it like that. And
yeah, but I really like this kind of feeling, this kind of magic of like you get to discover a whole new scheme that you're a child figuring out controls again.
Right. And like you would think that's like, oh, that's the most practical way to control something, Imagine a first person game playing any other way. But like I was used to like playing hours and hours of Perfect Dark on the N64, which used like I don't know how to describe I don't remember how I played it, but I knew I was very comfortable with whatever their system was. And yeah,
when I think about these issues, I think about it with a user experience kind of perspective, because there was this whole period where we didn't know how controllers. There was no standardized like controller scheme, right?
right.
And there was some very wild uses of controllers, and same goes with 3D interfaces. Nowadays, things are much more streamlined and standardized, but you lose a little bit of experimentation.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like that problem of like solving things,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It depends if you look at a game. Like I think there's this mindset that games are in the industry are products that are made to make money, that are made to be consumed, and then you have to solve problems to make them sellable. And so I looked a little bit at the game industry, but I really don't want to go towards this kind of logics.
Right.
To me, games are more like work of arts or trying to be something, trying to do something.
Yeah,
different.
Yeah. There is like so much more space to game. That's I'll often when I'm at like more like non-game events and I'm tabling there and people will be like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't play games. My one attempt to win them over is to be like, well, this is just like art in the shape of a game. It's not really like games.
And for those people who say I never played video games, you can recommend video games that are basically movies.
Right.
That's a
And
continuum, right?
there's right, and who knows like what their version of games that they're looking for is. There's so much
It's funny
like
because the game medium has evolved quite fast. So if those people you talk to might be a little bit older and have a definition from 30 years ago and never
Right.
updated it, who knows what they'll think of when they say that?
exactly. And speaking of things that have been around forever, I've got a couple of questions for you. I hope you're prepared.
Sounds good. I have a feeling I know what's coming, but it's less impressive when you have multi guests.
Yes, when you're the third person.
You can't surprise them.
Well, there are plenty of people have still been unprepared. An important question. What's your favorite type of rock?
I've been thinking about it because I am really like I don't know anything about geology,
Yes.
and I did have some precious stone when I was a child, but nowadays I would say just anything colorful, shiny, transparent. Essentially, I'd go for the feel of it.
Perfect. And now, do you have a
I've
favorite?
been-
Do you have a favorite Toho
So,
character?
yeah. So I have never really been into Toho as a game, but I have really loved Toho as a soundtrack.
Yes.
So it's a genre I'm really bad at it. So it's it's skill based. So if you don't get it, if it's not for you, it's not for you. Let's say. That means I have a very vague understanding of Toho. I know some things, mostly related to songs. I know, for instance, that Marissa stole the precious thing, whatever this means.
Right.
But so I'd probably say Cyrano because she feels relatable from very afar.
Perfect. No, that's a common favorite. So I think you
But
can-
I do need. It's been on my to-do list forever to get more into it and actually learn the Toho lore. Because it was such a big part of internet culture at some point.
yeah, and I mean, and the plus side is you don't have to play bullet hells. There's infinite worlds of Toho. So there
Oh,
are.
really? I should look into it because I see Toho. I don't even look at the rest of the web page. I assume it's a bullet hell, but
Oh, it is. So to get to very quickly explain
tangent.
the trilogy of
fine.
not the trilogy, the quick version of Toho is Toho as made by Zune is bullet hell franchise, but it also has like very open very large fan game community and open like fan game license, I guess you could call it, where
That's really cool.
you could make a within certain very loose criteria. I think they're very generous criteria. You could make a commercial Toho game tomorrow. Using all the
I
characters.
had no
and
idea
everything.
this was even possible because if I remember correctly, Toho was developed as part of a pure indie, like outside of the industry. It was It was exhibiting at fan events. It was a doujinshi basically at Comic and stuff like that.
The first Toho,
And it still is, I think.
Yeah,
It still
yeah.
has a presence there. But
I think he does like all their new releases that come out of Comic-Cats. Like, I don't think they're like, here's, your E3 presentation or whatever for Toho. I'm pretty sure I think all the new ones still just come out at Comic-Cats or similar kind of events. And
he must have changed status from, I don't know, a nobody to someone you can license to. That's interesting.
yeah, I'm not fully sure how, like what like I don't think you need to. I don't know if you need
It's
a contact.
Japanese law. No, none of us probably know that.
Right. I don't know the logistics of it, or if it's just like, hey, you don't have to check it with anybody. You can just do it and just don't do it wrong. Who knows?
Oh, I think it's pretty strictly structured in Japan. The production of fan works.
Right.
It's pretty like there is a way to do it, and you have to do it that way.
Yes.
I think. But
Well,
I'm sure we can find way more.
yeah,
informed people.
there are more
if we need.
specifics to it. We'll get into it later, but for now, hey, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you.
Great talk. We're gonna go on one last break, and then you'll be back very quickly after the break. But
That's fine. I'll just take a sip.
I'm gonna do the same. We'll be back in about 2 minutes and 21 seconds. Bye for now. Hello, and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was a weather day with sleep in while you're doing your best. We're back with the whole crew. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show.
Hello.
It's me.
Welcome back.
Yes, I am slowly reading up on as an official policy you can look up online. Basically, as long as you're not using assets from official. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yes, I thought it was pretty loose. Not what's not where it's like worry
Talking
about punishment, not
we're
permission, or something.
Continuing the conversation about the fan work
you asked-
permission from Toho.
Yeah.
We're responding to
You-
chat.
Yes,
The phrase is you ask for forgiveness, not permission.
correct, and hope you don't have to ask for. I was trying to reword that into a way of basically you have to worry about you don't have to worry about looking for permission. You just have to worry about not doing anything wrong.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, but I couldn't think of a clean way to do that. Of you won't get I think my general assumption is maybe you wouldn't get you don't need to seek permission, but they may come down on you for doing something wrong.
I missed the context here. What are you? What you were reading
so the
a
context,
EULA or something?
We were talking about how Toho's his very loose fan art.
Oh yes.
FanWorks rules. Whereas basically, I think you don't really need to sign anything, or because it would be impractical for him. There's so much made constantly. I think it's just basically do it right and don't screw it up. Don't there are the rules. Don't break them.
I
It
didn't
says a lot
actually-
though that he has a fan works policy for Toho fan art, and a lot of companies I've seen have also fan works policies. And it's a pretty well established practice. It means.
Yeah, well, I think it comes out of the doujin culture and everything, and
Exactly.
Yeah.
Super structured.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
know that was the deal with so now that I know that, I'm kind of want to I want to get on that. I want to make a game.
yeah, I think there are. I think you can look them up easily enough, and it's mostly you have to make sure it's fan work, and you can't, you can, where you have very specific distribution models or whatever. And then you can have you might have to depending on how you want to go. There may be different. There's probably tiers of right. There are different tiers of probably permission you need to seek out and those kinds of things. And also
how canon it is
Right.
to the universe.
right. And
Yeah.
I didn't even think about the impact on the story.
And I think the implication is that you can't make it. As they're saying in the chat, it's you are not an official game. You are clearly making a Toho fan game. You're not within the Toho structure.
The interesting thing would be if suddenly one of the fan games got to be much more popular, and that then became the real one.
I think to a lot of people that might be the case. Like I think because bullet hells are a very
Yeah, the gameplay and barrier is tough.
it is
So
like
what's the better one then? Which one should I be playing?
depending on what you're into, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people's approach to Toho is probably Luna Nights or as Mischia's Izakaya might be people's more comfortable approaches to Toho.
Right. The other thing that would be interesting that can't happen because it's just one person, but like if this was a company that had this policy, like if some of the employees could like, we're gonna quit, we're gonna form a new company and make Toho games.
Right, and
Like
but
so it's the same people doing the same work, but the because they didn't lock down the intellectual property situation on purpose, that opens them up to that sort of move.
yeah, it's a weird thing, but where it is born out of, a guy self-publishing at Comiket, like his
Right.
break.
This guy probably isn't. Yeah, this guy probably isn't trying to make the most money possible. He probably just wants to get by.
Right, and he wants to.
This one is made by like a guy, or originally, I guess. I thought it was like a.
I think there is a
Miku, like it's like a whole like corporate thing.
no. There, I think there is like Team Shanghai Alice. I don't know how many people constitute Team Shanghai Alice at this point. I've not looked into their structure of it all. But in general, it is sort of like an indie person made a thing that was very popular.
That's crazy.
I think probably you could probably think of it. Yeah, right. That's what I thought. It's just basically Zune and maybe people he works with occasionally. It would be similar to if like I'm trying to think of an analogy of like if people made a bunch of like if there was like a bunch of Undertale fan games, where
which there are.
right, exactly, but people were like, and yeah, I guess yes, exactly, Undertale is a
Yeah.
I have a question for someone who's more well versed in those games than I am. I think Undertale fan games are mostly variation, like new universes, or do they reuse the same characters?
Oh, I mean, the main thing is they all like use the characters. Like that is
Okay.
a lot of what makes Toho fan games.
There's like this video that goes into depth into the weird like rabbit hole of the spin-off like universes, the people fan universes, and then like,
Right.
fan universes based off other fan universes.
And a lot
I
of
was
it,
expecting more something like that because this comes a little bit from Homestuck, and Homestuck had a ton of declinations of people doing their own variation of it
Right.
without the
Yes,
main
actually-
universe, main cast.
right. I'm not sure the officiality of it, but in terms of like Western fan game production, Homestuck would be exactly the probably the clearest delineation of a thing a person with help from other people made that kind of spiraled into its own thing, its own massive thing. Because like, and a lot of them will share like there is like a lot of these games will feature like the concept of like bullet hell in some way, or grazing, where it's like you get score for getting extremely close to bullets. Is a concept that exists within a lot of even non-bullet hell Toho games.
Just
realized that it's
taking
pretty-
unnecessary risks and being rewarded.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of them will feature similar to their upgrade, like their upgrade systems or the grazing system. Right, exactly, right. I mean, to not get too into the weeds of the chat, but like, I think Undertale comes as a big surprise if you have zero familiarity with Homestuck, but if you're like, oh no, if you know what that is, like Toby Fox was a huge deal, that's how probably it got kickstarted in the first place, Like it was not like an indie game that happened to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, he was like a well-respected musician specifically, right?
Right, and he had like his I'm blanking on the name of it in the moment, but there was he had like done Earthbound ROM hacks too.
Like Halloween.
Yes,
Oh, neat.
like that's where like Megalovania comes from. You know,
Yeah.
that's like it was not an Undertale original.
So I think Undertale was like a Kickstarter originally, so he had
Yeah.
like people who gave him money for that.
Right, right.
Okay, so this whole time I've been on Moby Games, clicking on every game developed by Team Shanghai Alice, and I'm like 15 games in, and finally there's one that has a credits tab, and it says comprehensive developer Zune, and then special thanks, and then a few names. So
Yeah,
there you go.
I'm like generally, it's probably one of those like your classic like indie artist thing where maybe some other people will help here and there with something, or
Right.
like there'll be like some guest tracks. But yeah, no, it's there.
Yeah. But that was from 2013, so that's old information.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, this guy's been doing this since like '97.
Yeah.
Highly Responsive to Prayers was a PC '98 game.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And that is like, and that one, the first one's like a brick breaker. It's not even a bullet hell.
Right.
But I mean, that's
every indie developer's first game.
right. But it's also like
tutorial.
You're right. It's also like a slightly weird one. Like you hit the bricks, not as you leave, in that you smack them. But yeah, there is, and that's the strength of like kind of existing outside of the system. It's that weirdness of it. Of like it's one of those. I keep asking the Toho question every week I do this because I think it's like an interesting blind spot within like a lot of like English language like game dev, despite it being like one of the biggest things that's ever existed in games.
It sure opens the way for a lot of interesting considerations between the Western and the Asian market, especially historically.
Right. Whether it's like
yeah. If you consider like the indie game community to be like, I don't know, people who were reading Kotaku in 2012,
right, or the TIG
that
source
sort of
forums,
thing, like right, or and also like the immediate audience who bought those games on Steam and Xbox Live Arcade, that community of people, that's one audience you can have, but this guy just found a completely different audience with very little overlap, seemingly.
right. And
that's not really something you can. That's not something that it's very clear how you replicate that.
Yeah, I think part of it is like the U.S. especially does not have like events like a Comic-Con, where you can bring and sell games. Like pretty much every event I've been at, I've been the only person selling games, and that includes like things that are like festivals of indie games.
Oh, so these guys you were talking about, like who like bought games from you, played them in the hotel room, and then came back and were like, "Where can we get more of this?" They meant like just video games in general.
No, they meant Indiepocalypse. They were like,
okay, all right.
Like no, that was like
you were just like, I introduced this miracle drug to people.
I
like,
think
oh my
video
God.
game. I need more of it.
I think in some cases I am, but it's also like there's this miracle drug of like weird indie shit, of
right?
like
Yeah. Video games that are not made by a team of thousands of people,
right? And they're
with
just,
all the good and bad that goes with that.
Yeah, it's just like it's some things you can only make with like huge masses of people, but it's also like a healthy
Some
art.
things you can only do without.
Exactly, a healthy art form
Yeah.
has both of like.
Yep.
I'm not making Dune in my back room, in my backyard, with me and a couple of my friends. But also, like in the same way, fucking that same crew is not going to make like Slacker or something, with like a giant studio. It's just like different philosophies of like, oh yeah, different scales of people make different things.
It's almost a different medium.
Right. I mean, games have that problem massively of the fact that we lump all interactive art pieces into a singular category that we call that category games.
Yeah, I was thinking of you selling games at a convention, and it feels a bit weird in the West if to do that, but in Japan, as for Zune, they do that, and it's a little bit like selling your CD or something like that.
Right.
You know, it's has a more continuous spectrum.
Right. There is, there is very few, like, it just games. As someone who likes comics an awful lot, there are in the U.S. there are a lot of indie comic shows, like tons of them. Relatively speaking, but like even to the point where I went to one in Boston the weekend before I did the Boston Festival of Indie Games, and it was jam packed of people buying like indie comics that they've probably never heard of. They just like look cool. And then I did the following week. I did the Boston Festival of Indie Games, and I think there was one other person I believe there selling games, and I had made the tapes that he was selling. So, like it's that kind of perspective. Like it's just not a very common thing.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like nowadays, this is kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Like you just set up a QR code and just like buy it on Steam or Itch or whatever online store.
Which I think in some cases is like harder because I knew some people who were like, hey, our game is out. I was talking to them at MagFest, and they're like, they said, oh yeah, some people came back and showed us that we bought the game on Steam, but I was wondering how many more people would buy if they had like a physical thing there,
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels extremely different to have a something in your hand that you can look at.
Yeah, like
just to have like a Steam code or whatever.
And you go,
especially in the context of physical events.
Right. It's like, yes. I have my bag full. You want to bring back your bag full of stuff, not your bag full of QR codes you redeem for Steam games, I guess.
Right. And also, like, if you're going to a comics event, maybe you're trying to expand past the audience that even has Steam or knows what it is.
Right. That's like the similar, like, the approach of like indie shows of like, oh yeah, no, there are people. These are for people who like are looking beyond like what Steam is, whatever the commercial. Because there are no like superhero books there. Probably there's probably a couple, but it's like a lot of like people working in a more traditional like art space, I guess, whatever you call that space that is like feels less traditionally commercial.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and also, I mean, games also have a bad track record of that having that in between space of non-commercial, but you sell it. It feels often more like more of an all or nothing of like, oh no, I'm making a commercial game or I'm making a non-commercial game, and I don't sell my non-commercial game at events. Which is
how did you get there?
it's a tricky balance, to. It's really a lot of it's just like you want people to see your stuff, and commerce has an unfortunate strength towards like getting people to pay attention to things.
Right.
Yeah.
And attention is more and more precious, more and more divided. So
yeah. Like it's the misfortune of like how much stuff gets preserved because somebody is selling it,
it's a form of recognition, right?
Yeah.
Having someone put an actual price tag, actual value. It's our definition of it's our proxy for the notion of value. But...
Yeah, right. And it's kind of like I wish people like remakes weren't people's solutions for that in games. It's like, it's like, buddy, I played these ROM. I can download these ISOs. You can just release them. We just like, people need to.
The fact that the original Super Mario Bros. Isn't like just freely available is a crime, honestly.
Right.
Like,
it's right.
Yeah, that stuff should all be out of
big
copyright.
domain, right?
Right, or it should be just like a $5 thing that I buy at Walmart, like you know, like any kind of like you know like shitty DVD that has like eternally printed classics or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can always buy those like sketchy 1001 games.
Right. Yes.
They'll always be there.
But like
But yeah.
the like imagine like I feel like they were probably like imagine going to like a bookstore and like you can't like going to like a Barnes and Noble. It's like I can't buy The Great Gatsby. You know.
Yeah.
Sorry,
too old.
You have to get during the limited time you could get The Great Gatsby, and then they're going to take it away from you like later on.
Right.
You have a limited amount of time to read it.
Yes, and then right, just my digital version, or I can't wait till someone rewrites The Great Gatsby so I can check it out again.
Yeah.
Yeah, using fancier
There's a new
language.
Great Gatsby,
Right, it's got illustrations.
I rewrote it in English 2.0.
Right. I updated it to the modern
If you
era.
missed it the first time.
There's so much of writing has changed since he wrote that book originally, so we've really like updated it for the modern audiences. Yeah,
And there are like editions. So
Right,
that is
right.
a thing people have kind of done with books.
but it's usually very little like content changes generally.
Yeah.
Um,
Like mistakes and things fixed.
usually like different forewords maybe or like cover arts or. But yeah, it's an oddity of games where it's just like the technology exists there. You know, it's very easily accessible to like just download an ISO or a ROM of something. But like
Playing Super Mario Brothers, like thinking about Super Mario Brothers specifically, it's not actually if like the average person is gonna maybe they'll think maybe I could play it on my phone, but that would be an awful experience,
right.
And so you actually do need to figure out the hardware situation there. You need to figure out the interfaces.
Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, what we need is just cheap emulator boxes, you know.
Yeah.
Like the Mister and like all these like different like FPGA accurate retro consoles are fine and all, but also you know you don't need perfection. VHS is not a perfect recreation of film, you know. MP3s are not perfect. CDs, tapes are not perfect, but we had them. We don't need perfection. We just need shit that works.
That's one nice thing about like the Steam Deck seems to be, and like Steam OS when that comes to other stuff, seems to be a really good.
It
place for that.
completely
Like,
opened
people-
up the space. Yeah.
Yeah, like people are using those as like an emulator machines. And,
Yes, right. We just need one that's not like $700.
Yeah, well, I mean that is the Steam Deck's kind of like works as that, but like
Yeah.
I mean, if you made like a cheaper thing that like ran Steam OS, like it was
Right.
just for like emulation, I wonder like how that would turn out.
Yeah, just like a cheap little box, and then people can sell things for your cheap little box.
Yeah,
And it's like, you know, it's like a chore to like, okay, we need to get this, we need to port this to modern consoles. But you know, if you know, I'm thinking of Onion Sock just because it was when we were talking about Zune, there was a picture of him, the guy who from Onion Soft whose name I can't remember, and Toby Fox all hanging out together. But like, if they got like whatever like Rule of Rose and Tulip back tomorrow, and it's like, oh well, we have to work to update them for Switch, PS5. It's like, but if we have this little box, it's just slam that ISO on that box, you get those the next day, you know.
I mean, or you
PC
could just
gamers
run the
never
ISO
had
on
that
the
problem.
Switch.
Right. But you have this kind of like arbitrary barrier that is created of it's still weird that there are like multiple consoles when like the history of all their technology is like there's two and then one fails, like HD DVD fails, Betamax fails, 8-tracks fail, you know. And there's like a winning format.
Yeah, I don't know how Xbox is still competing, to be honest.
Right. It's weird that there is still we have 3 consoles still. 4 if
Well,
you count-
that Xbox is
Yeah.
they're pivoting to a strategy where like Xbox is just the brand for the games they release on every platform,
Yeah.
I guess.
Like, I don't understand how they can still maintain having like that standalone platform. Like they have like three Xboxes and like PS5 like two PS, well, now three. I don't know how many PS5s, but like the singular edition of the PS5 is like outselling all of them, and it's like I don't know, it's just weird.
Right. It's just like uh, I keep saying I think we just need to give up and just have one box. Like it's kind of like benefits the media. Maybe Nintendo and Sony don't make enough as much money or whatever, but
Yeah, try convincing them to give up that.
right. Just hey, Sony, what do you need your box for? Just let's just have one
The
box.
counter argument,
Yeah.
the counter argument, like for the player centric counter argument that comes to mind for me is that, for example, Nintendo only spends like 7 years making a Zelda and a Mario game,
Right.
because they know these games are going to be system sellers, and they're not profitable just from those game sales alone.
Right.
And so they would not, if they didn't own the platform, they would not be incentivized to make games of such high quality. And
Yeah.
instead, they'd be doing what Sega started doing, which is just like, yeah, we're just churning out a mediocre Sonic game every year.
They've got their new cash cows. They bought Atlas. They've got
Yeah.
I started getting into Sonic recently because of the movies. I played through Sonic Adventure. I'm actually really enjoying it. It's like a Sonic
That's
fan
a
now.
funnel I was not expecting.
Well, there's lots of
movie
them,
to
so
game.
yes,
you're in luck.
and
No.
and
Not
that's also the interesting of like people coming to Sonic Adventure having not the same cultural context for like just for Sonic Adventure having grown up through it. It's like so you said you've been enjoying it?
Getting into Sonic as an adult, yeah.
I do have. I played like a lot of old games. Like I played, like I like a lot of old games. Like I played the original Half-Life and stuff
Yeah.
a while ago, and played System Shock 1, and that's an experience. That game is impossible to control, and I kind of love it.
Right.
Yeah. The game that was made before first-person shooter controls were codified.
Yeah, it's a mess. Like half your keyboard is just like movement controls.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
These ideas of like of K is kick because K stands for kick.
Yeah.
So of course why wouldn't that make sense?
Oh, yeah, because it came from originally all those text games, right? The Zork types of adventure games.
And people not having like a singular language, so they're just doing what makes sense to them.
Yeah, I think it was like ASDX's move, and then like you have there's lean options Q and E, but they're toggles, and then to reset to the middle you press W. That's in the middle, right? And you have 3 levels of crouch, which are all like the buttons to the side, like R, F, and V.
And that's the thing where it's like, I'm sure the more you play it, you just kind of get used to it.
No, you do. I mean, honestly, like it was as I got into it, it's like I kind of like enjoyed it. It was like piloting a mech. It's, like,
right.
weird.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe that's not how it should feel, but it.
Do you remember how long it took you to learn, quote unquote, like to get super in the groove of things?
Most of the game, probably.
Yeah, because I was wondering who has that kind of time. People get bored, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
I saved a lot. No, but I mean,
It's
like,
a shame
I
because
like
you
a lot
miss
of those like
the
old
feeling.
games. Oh, sorry.
I was just saying it's a shame because you need to, after you've invested this time, you have this wonderful feeling of piloting your mech, which is obviously like something that is meant to feel complicated, right? But if you don't stick with it, you'll never learn.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a
time
weird
management.
thing where it's like, especially like old games with like that jankiness, where it's like, is that like a good thing or a bad thing? You were talking about like remakes earlier and kind of like that aspect of it, where like sometimes you can like smooth the edges, but sometimes that was like kind of what made it good,
Right, and like there's like a weird like connection you have with like there's when you know exactly what the game is from like playing it, like it weirdly becomes like part of the game that you're not engaging with, if that makes sense. Like it's like, oh, I know how to play this game, I don't have to like play it, like the play portion of it.
Oh, you're on autopilot.
Right. Whereas
Yeah.
like there's something to engage in. Like I need to figure out like how all these. I have to, I when I was playing all the FromSoft games, and just like they use the whole controller, sometimes to like, Shadow Tower uses like weapon switching, requires like multiple like shoulder button presses as like hotkeys for weapon flip it, because they're already using all of the other controller for something else.
Yeah.
And I just kind of like got used to it over time. I mean, even the modern games, like there is no sensible reason why shoulder buttons should be used to make like for the attack buttons, unless you're making games like FromSoft was making. But now just tons of people use them now, just because like that's how it gets done. It's like, oh
Yeah, that's what people are used to.
right, it's like, oh, that's what Dark Souls does, so that's what we do. We use shoulder buttons for attack buttons. And then
That's how you create a standard, by getting people used to it.
right.
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, none of that was like if you were coming off of
Yeah. Do you remember on the PlayStation 2 in GTA games, accelerate was X,
right, yes.
and then like that. Then later on, the standard became right trigger.
Right, because like X was like your action button, and if you're in a car, what's your action? It's driving. So of course X is
Yeah.
drive. Like you
And
see-
also on the PlayStation 2, X was an analog button.
Yeah.
Which is like all the face buttons were analog, which is like
Oh,
something that is
really?
like what a weird thing. What a weird like aspect of history.
right. There
I
is
know that.
there is still like the. I wonder, like, and that's like in some regards, it makes things harder to port. Of like, how do you port like, I think of like, playing Metal Gear 2, of like, you pull it all the way, you press square all the way to shoot, but you hold it up partially to like hold somebody up, and that requires
Yeah,
like
yep.
an analog face button that like doesn't necessarily exist in the same ways.
Yeah, you just need a controller with twice as many buttons on it.
Right. Or you need to, move it over to the analog where we have analog buttons on the shoulders now, and then
Yeah.
But
Or
the-
you plug in a keyboard and you push S to shoot or
Yes.
H to hold somebody up.
exactly. That's bring it. Just we need to be able to plug keyboards into all of our consoles and use them that way. That's the only sensible solution.
This is why the
Press-
Dreamcast was the best console.
Yes.
You
Right.
press T to turn left, and then since T is already taken, you push U, the next letter, to turn right.
Right. And then Y is right in the middle, so Y puts you in center. It centers you. It goes so that
Yeah.
goes
So there-
forward.
There you go. That's just
We should have a halfway, so like each will put you like halfway between right and center.
Yeah, right. That's how you like go to an angle.
Yeah.
We're just
I've always
reinventing.
The
thought
analog
that-
controls really.
I've always thought that keyboard keys should have velocity on them, like a piano, so that you could, like, if you're typing harder, you can type in capital letters.
Slug automatically.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't need to press caps lock if you're mad, because the keyboard can just tell.
I wonder if
And you could have more expression, more like you can type pianissimo and
Yeah.
Changes the
If I can tell that you're typing next to somebody who's trying to sleep.
right. Your typing dots are so tiny.
There's some keyboard that I think is like has analog buttons, like
Oh,
at least for WASD. I think
yeah. I was
I've
gonna
heard
say
of it.
I've seen like there's real keyboard freaks out there. A term I use complimentary,
Yeah.
that have like, oh yeah, I don't have any. All my keys are blank. And they're all just
Right.
then
different
you have
colors.
to make the software yourself to transform your like your intentions into something. So that's a lot of work.
Right, and that think of all the different things you could do if you expected everyone to have keyboards like that. But
It's incredible how much like the technology trains and shapes what we can do. If the early keyboards had been analog like that, maybe
Right.
we'd have completely different operating systems now.
right.
Yeah.
It's so much of like interactive space, like interactive art is kind of like working with the models that we have and like interpreting our ideas through them. But speaking of ideas, does anyone else have any ideas as we approach? We're hitting 2 hours, which is when I start to try to wrap this show up. So any non-promotional important statements, questions you need to get out before we into the wrap up section?
Things I need to get out.
Yes. It's perfectly fine. If not, that's what I like to hear. That way I can start wrapping up.
It's a good question. I think most importantly, I'd like to get out how impressed and amazed I am by the Indiepocalypse project, and
Well,
I'm happy to be a part of it. And thank you for having us here. And
no
all your
problem.
work.
I need to append that statement to say no compliments. Isn't that feels like yes.
I'm glad to have moved the statement forward.
Yes.
No promotion, no compliments, no letter E.
Yes. No things that say I like what you do, because then it's like, what am I doing? Am I inviting people on to shower me with compliments? Am I going to be the next indie game cult of personality? Never. I've avoided it. But
it's interesting to see like all the history of gaming reflected in this kind of conversations and in this kind of anthology that you're bringing up forward.
Well, thank you. I like old stuff, so I think about old stuff a lot. And I think about all sorts of different arts and everything, and it's a thing that I think about a lot, and where I can help to reflect it. Like the latest pitch that I found when I was at MagFest is like, I am like, Indiepocalypse is like the bridge between people who are making like really that kind of like experimental alternative stuff and the people who want to find it, even if they don't realize that they want to find it yet. Because I think having those bridges is like very helpful for people, you know. Whether it's just
I love the end of it, even if they don't know. That's very poetic.
Sometimes you don't like, you know, sometimes it's a friend showing you a movie that you like didn't realize was going to be your whole personality, you know.
Yeah, it's what we had before there was advertising.
Yeah. I always think about,
that's how you get the really formative experiences.
Yeah.
Really the gems in a way, yeah.
I think about like in high school, like when we like, I was gonna say, allow me to age myself to talk about on demand. And people from how many people here know what on demand is as a concept on a TV? You know.
It's like when you choose what to watch instead of just turning to a channel and seeing what's there.
Right, like that exciting thing where it's like some TVs would just have
pay-per-view, right?
No, or similar, but sometimes it would just have free stuff. It was like streaming. It was like pre-streaming streaming, where like Comcast or whatever, you would just have like on demand. And it's just like, oh yeah, I want to watch these movies now, and you can just like watch them.
Yeah, back when you needed to give that thing a name,
right?
Because it was new and interesting.
That is, yes, and the end result is that there was a time where one friend found the martial arts classic Master of the Flying Guillotine, and it was a sequence of our entire friend group slowly being introduced to this movie because someone had just like happened to find it, I think. And I think like there's a lot of that of like, oh, this comes from my friend, you know. This comes from like a smaller group, not just these things come from marketing or whatever is the highest selling thing in the
biggest convention. Yeah.
Right. Whatever. Oh, we're all playing Balatro because it's very, very rarely it's like, oh, my friend recommended me Balatro, you know, or whatever. It's like, oh no, it's just ultra popular and sells a ton. And like the market is not.
Well, Balatro is an interesting corner case, right? Because I got a few friends who got recommended Balatro by friends.
Yes.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, it's like There are a few indie games that really succeed. Like Outer Wilds is like, I feel like most people I know either were recommended to play it by someone or have recommended someone else or gotten someone else to play it. Like,
Yeah, and that
Word of
is
mouth.
that's
through
one
its
that has
Steam.
like it has like a longer life to it as well. Like in that people are still talking about Outer Wilds.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten like 3 of my friends to play it. Like,
Right.
like I'm part of that.
Right, and that is like
Yeah.
I think the market is usually a bad indicator of like longevity. Uh,
Yeah, definitely.
and you can see that like very anecdotally if you just like look up like top whatever top films of 19 top critical like films of like a top 10 list of like 1990s and look at the top selling of the 1990s, and usually the two like never overlap, you know. The long arc of like critical and cultural relevance usually doesn't line up with sales dollars. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's why I hit the wrap up segment, because you know anything can launch off into any other thing that will last forever. But if no one else has any other last minute statements, we're gonna hit the wrap up, the true wrap up.
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Perfect.
I'm good.
So I'm going to go around the circle then, and the circle as I observe it on my screen. And if people are looking for your work, where can people find your work?
Yo252yo.com. It's a ill-chosen name that I have chosen during my teenage years that
Yes.
I'm starting to regret thinking about a rebrand, but at least I don't get like too many robot spams. So
Yes,
it's
let me-
yo252 because it's kind of symmetrical, right?
Yes. Of
And-
course. Yeah. So just if you're in the Twitch chat, look for the username Pizza Pranks. Posting that link. Yeah. Sometimes you have it. Sometimes you're known by your name. Sometimes you live forever life as Dr. Pee-Pee, you know. Sorry,
Yeah, and
PP.
at least my username is free on every platform. So
Exactly, right.
If you see someone with that name, it's me.
Yeah, you've got. I bet if I just search it, you've probably got great SEO, which is an important thing to have on
If
the.
you remember the word, the character chain.
Yes, and I did, yeah, it's just you nonstop, nothing but you,
Yeah.
which is a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Yes, Julian.
It comes from the fact that
yes.
Y is the 25th letter of the alphabet. Sorry, I was I thought you were scrolling, so I was just trying to kill the blank.
No, I was scrolling for more, and then you happened to fill the blank. As soon as I stopped scrolling, you closed the window.
That's my curse.
Yes, it's the curse of not being able to visually get visual cues from one another. But also, the benefit of this show is nobody has to get ready for it. Other than like turning on a microphone, which is like having to get camera ready for podcasts is like the worst thing that's happened in this. I'm not being, and I am not being hyperbolic. It is the worst thing that's happened in these last 5 years. The idea that you have
Sorry that happened to you.
I know, it's truly the most unfortunate thing to happen to our society. I think is that people have to get camera ready for podcasts. I hope people can understand hyperbole and sarcasm on the internet sometimes.
That's why we need that analog keyboard
Exactly.
so that the keyboard can transmit that information directly.
Yeah, like, oh, this person's being sarcastic.
Right, I can tell by their typing
solve a lot
pattern.
of problems.
Yes. Julian, where can people find your work if you're looking to find it?
I have a website, julianh.dev, Julian with an A. They're both spelled with an E. So
Yes. Yeah, that's important audio distinction.
yeah. Once got sent a like official job thing with my name spelled wrong, so it happens.
No, I have an easy to say, hard to spell last name, which means when people read it, I often have people going "what" and misspeaking it constantly.
Yeah.
So it's a you have one of those similar things where easy to say, very easy to misspell. you have to like really throw the emphasis on the A, which depending on people's accents is easy to not do.
I mean, people say, with an A or an E, usually people just say it the same. So,
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, I am there. I'm on a few of the hopefully good social media, Mastodon and Blue Sky,
Yeah.
such.
I think Mastodon has a strength in that it is not, there's the strength of decentralization, of it can only be so bad by itself,
Yeah. I just find it like cozy. Like I go there for like, casual stuff. I go to Blue Sky for like business,
Precisely.
It's kind of my
I log on to promote.
Yeah. My take on Mastodon on the Fediverse is that like there's no algorithm there to like create the phenomenon where like there's a series of say there's really upsetting events in the real world, for example.
Yes.
Who could imagine that?
Right, of course.
If you go to like one of the VC funded companies, they have a vested interest in like showing nothing but that shit to you because they want to keep you upset. That's how they keep you using the site.
Right.
There's no algorithm happening there on Mastodon, so it's only the things that are like people are honestly like people who are honestly upset about them. You will only see those.
Right.
It's much more. It's much like which is like obviously a lot of the time that's still upsetting, but it's it's a much more calm experience.
It's pure interest.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes you will get someone who is social media brained and they will spill over.
Yes, that does happen a lot.
To Mastodon, and then you can mute them.
You don't follow those people.
Right. The mute tool is my favorite tool because there are plenty of people who I think I generally have no issue with, except I hate the way they use social media.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm like, yeah, I'll follow you, but then I also will mute you immediately because I don't want... But that social media gripes aside, Jim, where can people find your work if they're looking to find it?
Oh, yeah. My games are on twinbeard.itch.io. You can follow me on mastodon.social. My username is mugwai_poet. You can find my podcast, if you're not sick of hearing my voice already, you can hear much more of it at topiclords.com. The only place on the internet you can hear topics discussed.
Yeah, no, I specifically avoided topics for this show because I didn't want to step on your toes there.
Yeah, no, I would have had to sue you.
Yes, I'm terrified of being sued. So this was, fortunately, I made it by with being a no-topic show.
It's barely squeaked by.
Yeah, we managed to discuss subjects, thoughts.
Yeah,
concepts.
I don't have that one trademarked, so as much as I feel like I still own subjects in my heart, but I can't. I can't claim that.
You can't legally prove it.
Correct.
Nope.
I am doing the transmorphers of podcasting over here.
We did have one episode called Subject Lords.
Well, you should have trademarked it.
That's right.
Instead, someone's grandmother's going to get very confused. They're like, I want to buy my grandchild an episode of Topic Lords, but I got them this Indiepocalypse radio thing. They discuss a lot of subjects on that. You love those subjects, right?
Yeah, everybody loves it.
But anyway, that said, of course, this show, Indiepocalypse.com is where you buy Indiepocalypse. Indiepocalypse.com/submit is where you get that. You tap a /Patreon /newsletter / all that bullshit. You'll find it, what you're looking for if you type that at the end of that. We've got, if you want to get those game tapes that the people at MagFest are like going so crazy for, you can of course get those at pizzapranks.com/tape market. That's kind of everything. I think that's everything.
Getting those Nintendo tapes.
Yeah, I call them tapes, even though they're USB sticks. But I think tapes is a cool term.
This is, everybody should call video games Nintendo tapes.
Yes.
So that Nintendo loses its trademark, and that just becomes a genericized term.
Yeah, I'd never even called them tapes.
In fact,
when you were growing
that's
up.
what I should have said. That's what I should have said back when you were asking if there's anything we need to get out there. Like, this is what the people need to know. You call them Nintendo tapes.
Yes. They're like, tapes, folks, tapes are back. They haven't gone anywhere, and they're back.
Right.
Make your own. That said, Jim, Julian, thank you all for joining me here today.
Yeah.
Glad
you
Thanks for
very
having me. It
much.
was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
we're gonna head out with as soon as I find as the classic ending thing is me found Foobar. Goodbye, everyone.
Nice. Later.
Bye.